Let's proceed to the next example. We have four forces act on the particle shown. Determine the magnitude and direction angle theta of force F4 for the equilibrium of the particle. So we have a particle here. It is acted upon by four forces. Okay, F1, F2, and F3. And F4 is unknown. So what is F4? So, and its direction, so that the particle is in its equilibrium state. Okay, so same principle for a particle to be in equilibrium. All forces, all component forces along X and all component forces along Y should be equal to 0. So let's just apply Newton's first law. Yeah. So solve muna natin. So summation of forces along okay. So summation of forces along X axis is equal to 0. That's our first condition. So i-resolve natin lahat ng forces na ito into the rectangular components, X and Y components. So F1, let's start with F1. So ano yung ating X component of F1? So basically this is F1X, F1Y yung direction, F2Y, and this is F2X natin. F3, F3X, F3Y, and then we also lastly we have F4X, F4Y. Okay, so yan. So i-convert natin yung F1 into two components, ganun din sa F2, F3, and then F4. So we summate forces along the X direction or along horizontal axis. Equate that to 0. Let's start with F1. What is F1X? F1X is 750 cosine of 45 degrees. So adjacent side. And it's directed to the left, so minus. So negative siya, no? So F1X is minus 750 cosine of 45 degrees. Okay, that's F1X. And then F2X is also directed to the left, so minus. We have 600 adjacent side, so cosine of 75 degrees. Okay, and F3X is directed to the right, so that's positive, so plus 1000 cosine of 60 degrees. And then lastly we have F4 directed to the right, so plus F4X. Equate that to 0. Okay, so with this we can solve for F4X. We have one equation, one unknown. So F4X is equal to 185.621 Newton. So 185.621 Newtons. That's F4X. And then we summate forces along the vertical axis or Y axis. Equate that to 0. Again, let's start with F1. F1Y is directed downward, so negative. We have 750 sine of 45 degrees. Okay, F1Y. Then F2Y is directed upward, so positive siya. We have 600 sine of 75 degrees. And then we have F3Y is also directed upward, so positive 1000 sine of 60 degrees. And lastly we have F4Y directed downward, so minus F4Y. We have one equation in this one unknown in this equation, so we can solve for f for y. That is equal to 915.250 Newton. So f for x, f for y. Then we can now solve for f4 by Pythagorean theorem. So f4 is equal to the square root of the quantity 1 f4x squared, so it's 185.621 squared, plus f4y squared, that's 915.250 squared. Right. So you have f4 is equal to, what is f4? 933.883 Newton. So this is f4, and then solve for the direction of f4, angle theta, as the arctangent of f4y over f4x. So we have, what is it again? 915 all over f4x so the direction angle theta is equal to 78.54 degrees. Okay, so that would be this problem, solution for this problem. Alright, next problem. A body with a mass of 250 kilograms is supported by the flexible cable system shown in the figure. Determine the tensions in cables A, B, C, and D. Alright, okay. So this would be the system, flexible cable system. It is supporting this particular mass. The mass is 250 kilograms. We are to solve for the tension in each cable. So this is 250 kilograms. And solve muna natin yung weight. Although you can express the tensions in terms of kilograms, mas maganda na express na lang natin in terms of force, which is in this case in newtons. What do we do? How do we convert now this mass into its equivalent weight? So the weight of this block or body is equal to, we simply multiply the mass and the gravitational acceleration g. So this is equal to 250 kilograms times 9.81 meters per second square. So the resulting value would be 2,452.5 Newton. So this is the weight of the block or the body. Alright, next is how do you solve now the tensions in each cable? So basically, these are not pulleys, these are rings. So this hindi ito diretsong hindi ito diretsong cable. Okay, so magkaiba yung tension ng D sa C. Ganun din sa A and B. Okay, hindi ito diretsong cable. So these are rings now. So cut natin. So we're going to draw the free body diagram of the joints where the cables intersect. So ito yung joints natin. We have two joints here. Okay. Kakat natin. Ganun. Yung cut natin. And then gawin nating force yung bawat tension. Okay. So una, let's start with the lower joint. So why do we need to start dun sa lower joint? Pwede bang mag-start sa upper joint? So if you're going to analyze the situation here, sa upper joint kasi, unknown yung tension sa B, unknown din yung tension sa A, unknown din yung tension sa C. No? We have three unknowns here, three unknown tensions. And take note that we only have two equations. No? Two equations, summation of force along X, summation of force along Y. These are the two equations. No. So, if we have two equations and we have three unknowns, what tayo masasolve? So, mag-start tayo sa joint na may masasolve tayong value ng tension, ano? Na two unknowns lang. No. Okay, two unknowns lang. Saang joint yon? Sa lower joint. Okay, so at the lower joint, sa lower joint tayo, let's draw the free body diagram at the lower joint. So this is tension alright, oh no. Ayan. So, the weight now here, yung weight natin dito, ay yung tension pala sa cable na ito is equal to the weight, which is 2452.5 newtons. Meron lang tayong dalawang unknown dito, that is the tension at C, let's say T sub C, and we have T sub D here, T sub D. And don't forget to include the angle here, which is 60 degrees. Okay? Ayan. So, okay na mag-start tayo sa lower joint since we have two unknowns and we have two equations. No? We cannot start at the upper joint because we have three unknowns there. And we only have two equations. Alright? Okay? So, at the lower joint, we can solve for the tension at C and the tension at D by applying the conditions of equilibrium. Alright, so we have summation of forces along x-axis is equal to 0. So, ano yung mga forces along x? So, wala ito. The weight is directly, walang x component to kasi nasa, diretso siyang nasa y-axis. Downwards. Okay, TC has a component along x. So, we have TC, directed siya. So, this is TCX, TCY. TD, nasa X axis siya. So, wala siyang Y component. We have TCX or TC. TCX is TC cosine of 60 degrees. Okay, positive. Then we also have TD along the x direction minus TD. That should be equal to 0. Okay. Okay. So yeah, TC cosine 60 minus TD is equal to 0. Now, we cannot solve any of the two values here, no? So, we need to find another equation. Summation forces along the vertical axis or y-axis is equal to 0. So, yung mga vertical forces natin. So, yung the vertical component of TC sine of 60 degrees. And we also have ano pa? Yung mass natin or yung weight, which is directed downward, so minus 245 ba yun? Yeah, 245 newtons. TD, wala siyang Y component since nasa x-axis siya. And we equate this one to 0. So we can solve for T sub C here, the tension at cable C, since we have one equation, one unknown. So we have TC is simply equal to 2831.903 newtons. Okay. So knowing the value of TC, we can substitute that to this equation to solve for the value of TD. Okay, so TD natin, so TC is 2831.903 newtons. That's our answer. And then TD, substitute lang natin ito. So T sub D is, we have 2831.903 cosine of 60 degrees minus TD is equal to 0. So T sub D now is equal to, ating T sub D natin, 1415.952 newtons. So this is the tension at cable D. Okay? You're good. Alright, so that's it. Next now, since alam na natin yung value ng tension sa C, we already know this, and we can now proceed to joint the upper joint and solve for the unknown TA and TB. Okay? So dalawa na lang yung unknown dyan since we already know TC from the lower joint. No? Okay? So let's just mag-drawing na lang tayo ng free body diagram sa my upper joint. Para may space tayo. Ayan. So at the upper joint, let's draw the free body diagram. So it's the upper joint. We have TB. TA, and we have TC here. TC is TB, TA, and we have TC, which is equal to 2831 newtons. Don't forget also to include the directions. Yung directions natin, this is 30 degrees. This is 40. And then we also have direction natin. So this is going back to our figure. Ayan. This is 60 degrees ito, 60 degrees, which means that opposite angles are equal. This is also 60 degrees. Or this is, tama. That is 30 degrees ito. Ito lang din natin na angle 60 degrees. Okay, so this is 60. 60 but 30 yung sinusulat ko. 60 degrees. Okay, next now we apply the conditions of equilibrium. Conditions of equilibrium. So summation of forces along x axis is equal to 0. So let's refer to our free body diagram here. Let's start with TA. Ano yung x component? So this is TAX. TAY, TBY, this is TBX, this is TCX, this, sorry, this TCY, this is TCX. Ayan. Just para meron tayong basis for the directions. Summation of forces along X, let's start with TA. So TAX is TA cosine of 40. That's negative since directed siya to the left. So minus 40 degrees ba yun? Okay, so we have TA cosine of 40 degrees, and that's TAX. And then TBX is directed to the right, so positive. So TB cosine of 30 degrees. Yeah. And we also have TCX is TC, which is 2831, that is directed to the left, so minus baliktad na yata. Ayan. Ayan. So 2831.903 cosine of 60 degrees. And that is equal to 0. So this would be our first equation. Ayan. And then we have two unknowns here, no? So we have to find another equation that will be coming from the summation of forces along the vertical axis. That should be equal to 0. So lahat ng vertical components, let's start with TA again. Vertical component of TA, upward, so positive siya. So TA sine of 40. Then TB is also upward, so plus TB sine of 30. And then TCY is directed downward, so minus TC, which is 2831.903 sine of 60 degrees. And that should be equal to 0. That's our equation 2. We have two equations, two unknowns here. We have unknown TA and unknowns TA and TB. You can use your calculators to solve for this particular problem, no? So what is simultaneous na lang, or you can use, kung hindi kaya ng calculator, you can use yung conventional method that is algebra, elimination by substitution, elimination by addition or subtraction. Yeah. So using your calculator, so you have TA and the values of TA and TB. Alright, so TA is equal to 1506.824. Tama ba? Newtons. And then we also have 2y natin is 2967.864 newtons. So that's TA, that's TB. I have used my calculator. I don't know if you can see that in the video. You can use your calculators naman. So mode equation lang tayo. Punta kayo sa two equations, two unknowns. Input lang natin yung mga coefficients, values ng A, B, and C. So ang formula is AX plus BY equals C, ano? So this is the coefficient of A, coefficient of B, and then from our equation dito, kasi this is AX plus BY equals C. So i-transfer nyo lang tong constant, yung C natin sa right side ng equation. That would be the value here, dun sa may C natin. Ayan. Ganun din sa isang equation, coefficients natin, and then the constant C. Okay, transfer natin to sa right side, so this would become positive. If we transfer it to the right side of the equation, positive din to sa right side of the equation. So we'll have these values. X here is TA, Y here is TB. Alright? Ayan. So that's how we solve for this, how to solve this problem. Okay, complete na tayo. We have TA, TB, and we also have TC and TC and TD. Okay, so we'll have more examples sa next video natin.